you?
That would be design LED.
Oh, what is it? It's design what?
LED. L-E-T.
Design let.
I think that means it has very little design.
It's a, at least it's sustainable. All right, let's kick this thing off. It's Tuesday night, new time, 5 p.m., 5:03 p.m. Climbing Mount Bitcoin is the name of tonight's episode. I think we got a really good show on tap, folks. Got a little bit of local news, but not much, even though we've been gone for the last couple of weeks. Got a little bit of that. I have been gone for the last 6 weeks, and I'm going to regale you with a few pictures from my trip into the jungle. Hopefully you guys will stay awake for that. I went to probably one of the most remote places, certainly that I've ever been. They use very little money there, so I'm going to try and tie it in that way. We've got our own Rick Shreves going to do Bitcoin by the numbers, so stay tuned for that. And this week we had the Scaling Bitcoin Conference, which is addressing this problem with the block size and Bitcoin throughput. We'll probably take the bulk of the hour talking about the latest in the story of Bitcoin scalability. Got a lot to cover there. And last but not least, if we get to it, I know you're all on the edge of your seats about the SMITA. The SMITA. I'm getting a lot of strange looks. You know that that's SMITA. Hang on to your hats, folks. That's where we're gonna.
I didn't even bring my hat. I'm screwed.
So stay tuned. We got a great show. Let's go ahead and share our screen here so the folks at home can see what we're seeing. There we go. All right. Everybody at home should be looking at our screen here. We're coming to you live from Hubud in downtown Ubud, Bali. It's an excellent co-working space, pretty much the best internet you can find in Bali, and they are kind enough to provide the space every week for the filter. So we're very grateful to them. And if you ever find yourself in Bali, I hope if you're tuning in at home that you'll come join us in person. We do this every week at 5 p.m. We used to do it at 6. Now we do it at 5. 5 p.m. every week. Rain or shine, monkeys or no monkeys, we're here doing our thing at the filter. So we also do a little bit online. When we're not together in person, we hang out on this Facebook group. You can get there by going to facebook.com/groups/Bitcoins in Bali. We have our online discussion here, and this is where we get a lot of the content for the show. Anybody can post a story here and then come in person and we'll talk about it. So that's how the online portion works. We also have a discussion going on Twitter under the hashtag Bitcoins in Bali. But what we do every week is we take a look at some of the numbers around Bitcoin. Let's kick things off, and I'll turn it over to Rick Shreves. Take it away.
Back. It's good to have you. We missed you.
Thank you.
Just to run what's happening since we're in Indonesia, we'll start with the Indonesian price. Last price for a single Bitcoin in Indonesia right now, 302,000 rupiah. Across today, at least, the price has been actually incredibly stable. There hasn't been all that much happening here, but the volume in the last 24 hours is quite good, 179.2 Bitcoin. I think there's definitely been an uptick in volume and activity in Indonesia across the last 90 days. It seems to be gaining some traction. But for the rest of the world, in US dollars, what does that mean? It means brightness.
I'm just going to fan my computer. There we go.
There we go. Okay, the current price, $230.61. If you look at the chart across the last week, you can see we've actually been at the top of the week, down to today's price of $230, with a bit of a sharp fall off on the 13th for reasons that, that none of us have actually been able to put our thumbs on it, and a spike in volume there as well. Not sure what happened with that selling pressure, but we do seem to have leveled off at a new plateau. Anyone have any opinions on what was happening on the 13th or why we've had sales pressure across the last week? I mean, the whole Bitcoin XT thing seems to have calmed down a little bit. There seems to be a consensus emerging, just to foreshadow Gary's discussion later on today.
It's the Shemitah, man. It's the Shemitah.
It's the Shemitah. There's a Shemitah in the system. I don't even know how to use that word. I hope that wasn't really, really a horrible thing to say. Okay, so there we are. That's what's been happening across the last week. It's been a slide. I would tend to think that if we can get our act together on a consensus for where Bitcoin opportunity. But that's just my opinion. Don't go out and spend a bunch of money based on my opinion. Let's look at the next chart. Volatility. The last time we looked at this when I was here, volatility was just under 2%. We were down in really attractive numbers. It's doubled since then. Good for all of us, and I guess maybe for the speculators, the people who are actually out there trading actively, who are interested in arbitrage. These are great numbers because there's opportunity. Those of us who are hoping for a more stable, more reliable Bitcoin environment, 3.90 is not really a great number.
Standard currency.
About 1%.
Or less. Or less.
Correct.
If a currency moves more than 1% in a day, a news item. So, but we've seen those in major currencies over the last 6 months. It's kind of amazing. You know, people talk about Bitcoin volatility, but we've seen huge volatility in major currencies around the world. I think it's just emblematic of all the craziness that's going on.
I just came back from changing money, and I got almost 14.4 to the dollar on the rupiah.
Yeah,
You know, huge number.
yeah.
I don't know what the 30-day volatility number is for the rupiah right now, but I would say it's definitely over 1%.
Right, and certainly over the last year, rupiah is like 15 or 20%, I think, in the last year on the rupiah. So,
well, I know when I first moved to Ubud, which was about 2.5 years ago, it was at 9.8.
It's 9.3 when I got here 3 years ago.
Yeah, well, the lowest I've ever seen it was 8.6 or 8.3. So there's been some big movement. Right now, at over 1,400 is the highest I've ever seen it, and I've been here for 11 plus years. So yeah, definitely a good time to be swapping into rupiah. There's some bargains to be had out there. Time to pay off those long-term rental bills right now. Okay.
But yeah.
Sorry, let's go forward. I don't want to eat too much of your time, Gary. I know you got a bunch of news items. Taking a look at the network data. What's been happening in the last 24 hours, 149 blocks, averaging 6 blocks an hour, right at that 10-minute per block processing number as usual, 9 minutes, 39 seconds. Average transactions per block, 6,354. And the block reward right now is 25 Bitcoins, which is a value of 5,766 bucks. Our market cap staying at 3.3 billion. All right, next up. What are our daily number of transactions? This is for 3 months. Can we zoom that back down to 1 month, please, Gary? Thanks. You can see we had a bit of a spike in transaction volume, and this relates to that September 13 fall that we saw, I think. The numbers are way down right now. On the 14th, we'll see if this bounces back across the next couple of days. Across the last week, though, we actually have seen a gradual trend upward in the number of daily transactions. If you take a look at the chart down at the bottom, you can see how the daily transaction volume has evolved over the past few years. Again, Bitcoin seems to be continuing to trend in the right direction with a more viable ecosystem, more transactions, more people getting on board. All right, and the last chart I wanted to look at here today was this, guys, our Bitcoin venture capital chart, because there have been a couple of things happen since the last time we spoke. If you take a look on September 2nd, a company I'm not even familiar with pulled in a small round, $1.12 million, their payment processor. Can you scroll to the right, Gary? I don't know where Paynium is based.
I believe they're in France somewhere. Oh, is it?
It does scroll left and right. There we go. You're right. They're in Paris. They're in France. Excellent. And then above that, another European investment as well, this time with Shapeshift. Shapeshift picked up 1.6 million. That's their first round, not their seed round, so they already had a little bit of money in their pocket, and they're in exchange. The big news is we had a really large investment on the west coast of the company called Chain, which isn't even on this chart yet, but I think Gary's going to get to that later on, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then I'm going to stop there. That's Bitcoin by the numbers. Hand it over to you, Gary. What's happening in the news world?
Okay. All right. Let's take a look. I don't even know what's been going on in the news because I've been off the grid.
Literally.
Yeah. Basically, I've been gone for the last 6 weeks. Most of that time was spent in Vanuatu. This is Bali right here, and this is Vanuatu over here in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's kind of near Fiji is kind of the biggest airport nearby, and essentially this is a country in itself, right? I think, but they've only been a country since 1980. So we're talking about a very remote place on Earth. I went there to visit my sister. She's been in the Peace Corps for the last year and a half, and basically
this is the dad slides portion of our show today.
Yes, try not to fall asleep. Once I arrived, how remote this place is. Once I arrived in the capital of Vanuatu, I had to take 2 more plane rides. The last one landing in this field. It's basically that's the airport right there. It's just a kind of an open field with some grass in it. Then I had to get on a truck for 2 hours, right? There's only 5 vehicles on this entire island. All of them pickup trucks. I got to ride in the back of one.
What's the name of the island you were on?
Maiwo. Maiwo is the name of the island. Then there's a hike, a 2.5-hour hike to get over the mountain to the other side of where we were. And of course, after you hike, the big thing in Vanuatu is kava.
Oh,
kava. This is me getting high on kava. It's really fascinating. Like these people live just like people lived hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. You can see they've got t-shirts and stuff on, but most of them don't have shoes. They use very little money and no electricity, no running water, no refrigerators. That counts on electricity, but for those of you who can't deduce that. And they live basically, talk about the organic, sustainable lifestyle. These people are sustainability farmers. They basically grow and or kill everything that they consume. Right? There's about 600 people. Question?
But you know what Vanuatu is famous for, right?
What, kava?
No, the cargo cults.
Oh, yeah.
Vanuatu used to be the New Hebrides, and the island of Tanna was where John Frum was worshipped as part of the cargo cult.
I knew nothing.
So they had a refrigerator.
Yes, apparently they're waiting for the refrigerators to come back. I learned about the cargo cult while I was there. Basically, this was a big strategic place during World War II, and lots of U.S. Army and probably are there on the islands. They showed up, and these people had seen nothing like it. And there are spontaneous religions called the John Frum cult, they call it, where their deity is going to show up with a bunch of ships and cargo someday. And they think they worship is it a person named John Frum?
I think John Frum is sort of a concept.
Okay.
I don't know if it's
I think it's John from Cincinnati, John from Canada.
There we go.
I don't know. But I'm glad you brought that up because I think it shows like just how primitive this place is, right? And you know, I was this is what they told me, but I was one of only I think 10 or 15 white people that have ever been to this village. So it is fascinating. I thought it was fascinating because it gave me a glimpse into how people operated before there was money. Because although they use a little bit of money, Vanuatu has its own currency. There's not a lot of money coming and going from this village, right? It's pretty much people living together, relying on one another, doing things together, and that's how the culture works. So, you know, we think about money, we talk about money in this meeting all the time, and it's just interesting to see the other extreme, right? And I'll make I just had a few observations I'll let you know.
There's the Peace Corps there.
Why is the Peace Corps there?
Like it'd be a peaceful place.
It is very. We're going to bring the war though. There's no profitability in peace. That's just a misnomer. Anytime the government names something, you should just assume it's the opposite.
What's the currency called in Vanuatu?
The Batu.
The Vatu.
The Batu. Yes. So here's me reading a book to the people there. You can see they live right next to the jungle, and you can just walk out there and grab a coconut and eat it. And that's what they do. There's plants they can eat. They just pull food right off the plants and cook it up. You can see this woman's breastfeeding. This woman's doing the laundry. It's all pretty basic. They speak Pidgin English. And I'm going to play a little movie in a second. It's almost like English, but you can't really understand what they're saying. Have you ever heard of the term Pidgin English? It's like
French.
The French and the English were in this archipelago, so that they've got kind of a mix of French and English, and it's called the language they have is called Bislama. You'll hear a little bit, but this is my sister right here, and she's showing us a little movie on her computer, and you can see just what a big deal it is when someone pulls out a computer. I mean, they are just mesmerized. That's probably most of the people. Well,
They're going to generate here, right? You gotta lie.
they've got solar power, but the solar can only. I mean, most people only have like a little lantern that they run on solar. Alexis and her husband that are there on the Peace Corps business, they have a larger solar panel, and they can kind of keep their laptops charged, but they have to, before a little event like this, they have to like charge it for 2 days, put it on the solar for a couple days before they can actually show it to anybody. But I just thought it was pretty interesting to see people getting excited about looking at it. There was a baby born while I was there. No doctor, no hospital, just babies are born like kind of, at one of they've got a little nursing station there that they use, but they do it all themselves, man. They're all self-sufficient. If there's ever going to be a global meltdown, financial meltdown, these guys probably won't even notice. They'll keep having babies and they'll keep cooperating the way they do. Now, while I was there, they arranged for a horse for the village, and these people have never even seen a horse. They've never seen a truck. If they've never been to the other side of the island, they've never seen a horse, never seen a truck. But they're excited about the horse, and so every Tuesday they get together and they build the road the horse is going to use to get down to their village. So there's no, they can't depend on the government to come in and do this. They can't depend on anybody. If they want a road for their horse, they just have to get together and do it. None of these guys are making any money by working all day. They just agree, like the horse is a good thing for the village, and so we'll build a road. And yeah, it's kind of interesting when you have no support. I think for me, this is a lesson for me. When you have no government support, when you don't expect the government to show up, then you just make stuff happen, right? If you think the government's going to take care of things, then you allow a pothole to sit in front of your business for 5 years, right? Because you think someday the public works is going to come fix it. If you know the Superman's never coming, then you do it yourself. And I just want to point out, this is me right there digging some road. I was very, very. This is a photo op basically. Sure, these guys worked all day. They were like workhorses. I mean, they're in the garden every day, just doing manual labor. Everything that they do, they have no machinery, they're doing this with, in most cases, they don't even have a metal hoe. They're using like branches to dig the side of the mountain away so that this road can be built. But I've got a little movie to share here, and let me see if I can pull it up for you guys. Bear with me for a second. Let's see here. I wanted to pull this up in the browser, but it didn't work. I just want to kind of give you a feel for how happy these people are, because I think it's, these guys have been working, at this point, they've been working for most of the day, and this is hard work. Let me just share it with these, make sure I'm sharing this thing with everybody. All right, let's take a look here. take a look at this is well into the day, maybe 3/4 of the way done with the day. You can see they turned the jungle into this road by hand, and this is just a few seconds, a few little snippet.
You want to go?
That word's gonna take a long time.
It is. You're right. It is. This is a long way. This is only a little piece of a 2-hour hike. So this piece, probably took about 5 minutes to walk through. So you give you an idea of how much work they have to do. But everybody's involved. This guy is the chief of the village. This guy right here. He's right in there working right alongside them. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys. I thought it was an interesting thing to observe, and well, it made me really appreciate what we have in the West, but it also made me appreciate another lifestyle. It's no picnic. I mean, I think I kind of idealized that kind of lifestyle, at least at a time, but I'm not sure if I could live this. I mean, out of necessity, I would, but it's a hard life. It is a hard life. And you can almost see it in people's faces. Like you meet a guy, he's 30 years old, he looks like he's kind of 35, But anyway, that is that. Thank you for indulging me. Let me put this back here so people are with us again.
How long were you there? About
I was there for 26 days, yeah.
losing what?
Visiting my sister in the little village where she was, and then the capital.
Did you lose any weight?
I did, yeah. I mean, the main thing that they eat is called taro, and they also they killed a pig while I was there, which was a big deal, and they also killed a few chickens. But for the most part, it's a vegan diet.
What about any like bats? You guys like eat any bats?
They do eat bats, and in fact, one time somebody said, "Come here, take a look," and they pulled the lid off of a pot, and there's like 2 giant, what they call flying foxes, in the pot. I mean, it looked like a witch's cauldron, like just the devil's brew with like these claws and fangs coming out of it. I did not try it. Yeah, I would have, but I don't know. I was gone by the time they served it up.
Okay.
I did see it and had a few nightmares, and I think everything's going to be okay.
What's your sister doing then?
She's with the Peace Corps,
Yeah.
and she is working on various projects. She arranged for the dispensary to be there, so that they've got a rudimentary nursing station, so that they can have a place where they can have babies. The horse that I mentioned is part of that dispensary project, and it's not finalized, but she's talking with the government about program over video conference, low bandwidth video conference. So I'm really proud of her. She's doing interesting things, and yeah. I've been living this way for 1.5 years, so yeah, pretty amazing.
Is it Kava every night?
Pardon me?
Kava every night.
Kava every night,
Every night.
and I didn't drink kava every night, by the way. I couldn't keep up, but and they do it by hand. Ceremony around it. It's not. What's interesting is it's not like this in the capital, where they've got kind of caught up in the Western style of work. where they've got automated processes to make the kava. In the little village, you have your guy that's going to make your kava that night. And he gets a handful of kava in one hand and a piece of coral in the other, and he grinds it until it's like liquid, until it's like a pulp. And then they squeeze the pulp into a glass, and then you drink it. But it's fascinating how labor intensive it is, but it's part of the culture. It's not part of it's not part of the economy. It's part of the culture, right? And oftentimes you don't even pay for kava. I didn't pay, maybe once or twice I paid for kava at the kava bars outside of this village, but in the village, it's like a gift, which is pretty neat.
What'd you sleep in?
Pardon me?
Do you have a tent?
Nope. Well, my sister had a very luxury place that had a concrete slab with natural materials over top, but most of them have a dirt floor. They got the kitchen inside the house. They cook over an open flame, and yeah. But I had it pretty good. I had a bed and concrete.
How do you contact your sister? Like,
They don't have any connectivity there. So when she goes to the capital, I can connect with her.
wow.
And she's got a satellite phone where I can send, I think, 160 characters via email.
For like $1 or something.
I don't know how much. I don't know how much the sat phone costs,
Right.
but yeah, it's pretty basic. So anyway, thanks for indulging me on that, guys. All right, let's take a look at this. This is one of the sites that was posted in the group. One of the guys who rolled through here, Pontus. Did you guys ever meet Pontus? He created this website. It's just a kind of a basic thing. I think he's from Sweden or Norway. He posted this. I just wanted to give him a little plug because he put this site together. It's a little bit of a how-to on Bitcoin with some videos and podcasts. And
something that like I checked this out, and I'm just jumping in, so pardon me if
No.
you know, I don't care if we talk about this or not, but I thought I'd ask.
Sure. On that, I think not all of the use cases that people think are good for Bitcoin have borne themselves out yet. But I'll leave it there, and we can talk about it more. Maybe we'll talk about it next week. All right. So yeah, there's this site, and coinacademy.co is the other site that has a lot of curated content, some original content, and a lot of how-to on Bitcoin. So check that out. Let's get into some of the news items that have been posted by
So, now you're back.
maybe it's okay. Let me just make sure these guys are okay. Sorry about that, guys.
Dealt with better than I did.
All right. So just from what I've been able to glean, and like I said, I'm behind the times a little bit, and you guys can jump in and correct me where I'm wrong, but to my thinking, Bitcoin is experiencing an existential crisis. There's an idea of Bitcoin, right? And the reason that Bitcoin has succeeded where other technological money experiments have not succeeded is because it's decentralized. So e-gold and Liberty Reserve and other money projects in the past have failed because there's a guy to go after or a company to sue or someone to regulate out of existence. And because Bitcoin, there's no head of this, there's no way for it to be stopped. It's like a force of nature. So the idea of it is a decentralized system that hypothetically or theoretically nobody has control over, right? Now, this is software. Software is designed by human beings. And I think what this crisis is showing us is that Bitcoin technology needs to change over time. A trade-off that was made early on with Bitcoin was to limit the block size megabyte. That created a scalability problem, which obviously there was no scalability problem in the scale. But now we're doing make decisions based on a different trade-off nexus, a different trade-off calculus, if you will. What this is telling us is that Bitcoin needs to change over time because the circumstances were one way back when Bitcoin got started. They made the one megabyte block decision then based on those circumstances. Circumstances have now changed. This requires a technical change within Bitcoin, and the question now is, can Bitcoin change over time or not without a central figure or the centralization that people were trying to avoid from the beginning? So it's in the grand experiment of Bitcoin, like we like to say around here, it's never boring, right? We got another very exciting moment. We're in a very exciting time for Bitcoin because will Bitcoin be able to weather this storm? Will they be able to increase the scalability of the network protocol itself or not? It's more than just a technology problem too. It's kind of a sociological, anthropological problem. How will the culture, the Bitcoin culture, address this problem? Go ahead.
There's also an ego issue at play too, isn't it?
Hi, come on in. Oh, Eddie, how you doing? It's old home week. Welcome. Make yourself at home. So anyway, welcome guys. You're just in time. We're talking about whether Bitcoin will live or die. So just in time to either figure out if it'll live or. This was something that was just posted either today or within the last few days. You know, like I said, I'm still getting up to speed, but the question is, I think there is consensus around the fact that Bitcoin needs to become more scalable, right? Bitcoin needs to accommodate more transactions per second. As we've gone over many times, in fact, Will, I think you first brought this to our attention that there's a 7 transaction per second limit on the Bitcoin network. So because of that one megabyte size limit in the software, there's a 7 transaction per second bottleneck. And
with Edmund actually, and I just Facebook page.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion on that. I won't beat a dead horse, but the technical answer is, well, why don't we just make the block size bigger, right? Because that will ipso facto improve the transaction per second volume that's possible. But there are all kinds of economic incentives that become different when you make that change. And so there are a lot of people with varying vested interests in Bitcoin itself that are, you know, basically at odds with how this change will take place. The crux of it is that as you approach the limits of Bitcoin, there becomes a competitive landscape for the transaction fees. And for those of you who are maybe a little bit new to Bitcoin, there's a few ways that the Bitcoin network incentivizes people to participate. One is the block reward. Baby new Bitcoins born, those go to somebody who's participating. And then whenever you do a Bitcoin transaction, you tack on a little 2 or 3
if you're trying to transact after that, you just can't.
Yeah, they would be delayed, right? So instead of having, say, a 10-minute confirmation time, it would be some multiple of that, right? Because your typical block processing time is 10 minutes. So.
The discussion,
No, go ahead.
well, the discussion I've been hearing on Let's Talk Bitcoin is that, you know, you've only got a certain number of, it's not a lot, you know, like, it's not even 7 transactions. The average is about, if you look at the amount of data in each transaction with multi-sig, things like, well, a lot of people add extra data on for different uses. I think it's like 3 to 4 transactions per second versus 40,000 for Visa. That's its capacity. And so what you'll get is, what they're saying is, the fees, you'll max it out and you've got to compete. You've got to pay more fees to get your transaction through. So instead of paying out a few pennies to get a transaction through, people are going to start to pay more and more to get it through on the next 10-minute cycle. And then blockchain starts to look like a clearinghouse. So you'll have centralized organizations like banks or exchanges clearing transactions, and then it starts to look like only the wealthy can use, or large organizations can use the blockchain, and then the transactions that you'll be using on Bitcoin will be running through these things like Bitstamp, BitPay, organizations that are collating, and it's a different type of it's different from what the design was.
Yeah, basically you'd be paying a bounty to get your transaction processed, and so, you know, move you to the front of the line.
Which means the idea of like making the unbanked does onto others.
Well, it would just, you know, if you wanted your transaction done quickly, you'd have to pay a bounty. But I mean, I'm sitting here looking at a live count of transactions pending right now, and even as we sit here at this very moment, there's 156,604 unconfirmed transactions in the system, and that number is changing constantly. So, you know, even with the current size of the block, we're still 150,000 transactions back.
It's an interesting question, because even before we reach that capacity limit where people are starting to realize they need to attach more money to their, you know, in the form of their transaction fee, we could see people experiencing usability problems with Bitcoin itself. If you're using the wrong wallet and it creates your transaction fee incorrectly, you may see transactions that never clear. And if people start losing faith in the Bitcoin network acting as they expect it to, then, well, then that will, you know, it's all about credibility.
The utility value drops.
Right, right. Although the Bitcoin itself, at some point, needs to move from the block reward incentive to the fee incentive. So someday we have to rely on the fees that were created. But as Rick mentioned, if we've got more transaction fees, and you know, as long as it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 or 6 cents, it'll still be wildly more useful for the 2 billion people that don't have bank accounts on planet Earth. So we shall see. What else have we got here to look at? All right, Bitcoin in headlines: 45 million a week, snaps funding slump. One of the things that people have been talking about around all this block size debate is that it's having a chilling effect on Bitcoin itself. And, you know, some people really speculate that the companies that have the most to lose are the companies that have invested in Bitcoin technology, or the ancillary technology that helps Bitcoin become viable in the marketplace, right? There's, I don't know, Will, you mentioned, like, there's something like 25% of the total market cap of Bitcoin has been invested in these Bitcoin companies that help make things happen in and around Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin goes to zero, those venture capital investments look pretty worthless as well. So it's a very good sign that also seeing again that money is coming in. We looked at a list of all the companies that had recently received venture capital investment, and on that list was this Chain.com company, which got another 30 million recently within the last week. So that's a good sign, but, you know, of course, in tandem with this discussion about the venture capital investment, They go on to talk about the question marks around this block size debate. And the block size debate rages on. It is far from over. And well, if I just invested $30 million in a Bitcoin company, I think I'd be on the edge of my seat, right? So here's the kind of things that are going on. This is the kind of thing I've been missing while I was gone. Well, would you look at that? The sun rose this morning, and it's another totally batshit day in the world of Bitcoin. I really missed Bitcoin discussions when I was off the grid. This is a DDoS attack on Bitcoin itself. So we're talking about the problem with Bitcoin being a throughput problem or a scalability problem. It exists in the wild. It's supposed to be able to accommodate anything that anybody can throw at it. And that is what happens. It's the wild, wild west. It's total anarchy in the true sense of the word anarchy. There is no real governance of the network protocol itself. It's an open protocol. Anybody can send any request to the Bitcoin network they like. And this company, CoinU, is that the one that did it? Drove the transaction volume up and I think created, what was it, 300 megs of unverified transactions at a certain point. Of course, those all eventually cleared, but it probably meant during that time that if you did a small transaction or a transaction with lots of inputs and outputs, you might have had to wait several hours for it to clear. And they're trying to make the point that a change in the block size is needed. They're trying to cause a few problems, illustrate or elucidate for this change. They did things a little bit differently this time. In this case, at first they did it themselves. They just started hammering the network with transactions of size 0.00001 Bitcoin. But in this last DDoS attack, or this last stress test, they gave away 200 Bitcoins. They chopped up those Bitcoins into 0.0001 Bitcoins a piece, and then they published the private keys. So anybody could go in there, grab a private key, and then switch that small amount of Bitcoin into their own wallet. So it was a crowdsourced, what's that? 200 Bitcoins?
Yeah, but each wallet would be like $2.
Right, right. Well, what they're trying to do is create a large number of small transactions on the network. So that's what they got. And of course, people being greedy, people are not afraid to bet 1/1000th of a cent. Turns out, if for you, they're happy to do it. Sentence in this story. I think Coin Wallet hoped that people and their attendant human board them, and it worked. Great job, everybody. Of course, that's a little bit ironic. There's a little bit of snark in there. You know, they're saying that it's not good for Bitcoin, but I think that anytime, and Bitcoin is still 200 and something dollars per Bitcoin, then it really shows the resiliency of Bitcoin itself. How much money is 200 Bitcoins, by the way?
40 grand.
Is it 40 grand or 400 grand? Is it 40 grand? Or 400 grand? 40 grand. 45. Okay. So, you know, it's just, for me, it's fascinating as, you know, being able to get together every week with you guys and talk about batshit crazy stuff. That's what's fun for me. So as long as Bitcoin didn't die, and I think Bitcoin is still living, we can have at least one more meeting. So anyway, moving on. Okay, so all of this debate prompted an impromptu scalability or scaling Bitcoin conference in Canada, right? So they pulled this together in record time. I think they had, like, there were problems around Bitcoin scale. We're going to have a conference in Montreal or Toronto, Montreal, and we're going to talk about the scalability problem. And there's a lot of developers at this conference, and they streamed it all. It looked like it was a pretty well-organized event. And it certainly kept the conversation going about this question about scalability. And there's lots of stuff online. You can check it out. But this is the official website for the conference. There's already stuff being talked about you can find stuff about it on. And I thought this one was interesting. I'll put these links in the show notes. But this is a conversation that was highlighted by Gavin Andreessen, who's one of the prominent developers in the Bitcoin space, one of the people who was involved from the beginning. And he said, this is the most interesting piece of the Scaling Bitcoin conference. And it's not about scaling, it's about the governance of Bitcoin itself. How is Bitcoin governed? How do changes become manifest in the Bitcoin protocol and the Bitcoin software going forward? And although Bitcoin has been around for 5 or 6 years, I think for the reference implementation of Bitcoin, there's only 5 developers that have commit permissions on the Bitcoin Core project. So when something in that project changes, how are those changes governed? And this portion of the conference, and it's pretty interesting, they talked to an anthropologist. There's a woman who is an anthropologist for online communities. She spent the last 3 years studying Anonymous. And she has studied the Tor project and Debian Linux. And so she knows how these adhocracies, she calls it, come together and what perennial problems they experience as a culture. And she applies technology to the, usually you think they're going and they're going to show up at like my sister's village. The anthropologist is going to show up. They're also showing up in these new cultures that exist on the internet itself. And it's worth a watch if you want to nerd out for an hour. If you're interested in more, basically. You can see that the time is noted in the link, so it'll start right where you need to start from. This is where Gavin Andreessen is calling out that link. Most important content from Scaling Bitcoin, and that's it right there. That's Gavin Andreessen. Apparently he needs to wear welding goggles while developing audit is. But anyway, it's interesting because, and we'll get into this in a moment, but he took one tack. He's a very prominent developer. He and another guy named Mike Hearn introduced a proposed change to the block size to 8 megabytes. They called it Bitcoin X. Talk about Bitcoin XT when I was gone.
There was one episode.
Right. That was his attempt to address the scalability problem that we've been talking about. But at the moment, that proposal is waning in popularity at the moment. And so he's kind of eating his hat a little bit, in my opinion, and saying, well, I tried something. Maybe it's not working so good, but let's take a look at the problem. How arise? How should the governance of Bitcoin take place? No government of Bitcoin itself. We want no head of the snake. We want no consolidation of power. But what happens when we need to change the block size from 1 to 8 or 1 to something else? Fascinating. So anyway, here is a graph. It's on blocktrail.com. This shows the Bitcoin democracy. You vote by running the software that you think is correct. The Bitcoin XT is an implementation. There's also Bit 100, which is another proposal to address the scalability problem. These are the people that have not upgraded at all, but you can see as we stand today, this is the Gavin Andreessen's XT proposal. They're at 8% currently. This other proposal, BIP 100, which raises the block size to 2 megabytes from 1, is currently in the lead with 64. And then these are the people sitting on the fence, the undecideds, the swing voters, if you will. These guys have not voted yet. Yeah, that's the way we stand now. It's interesting to see there's some kind of governance going on because people can make their point on YouTube, and then they can watch to see if they've made their case in a compelling enough way where people actually adopt the software that they. And Will, I think you made an interesting point. before we started the show about this used to be a much bigger number. This, I think it peaked at a higher number than.
Look at week and month.
Okay, so let's see. For the week, maybe it was 10%. And that was at 18%. Is that where it peaked at 18%?
You want the link here?
No. We can see it. You can see it here. So anyway, you can see that there's been a lot of debate. Here is this Epicenter Bitcoin. It's a podcast. It's pretty good if you take a look at it. And they've been running an interview with Adam Back. He's the guy who invented Hashcash. He's one of the people behind BIP 100. Here's Gavin Andreessen. He's the guy behind 101. Let's see. There was one with Mike Hearn. I guess he's a ways down here. But anyway, there's been a lot of people making their case in the public space about their opinion about this problem. And then the voting takes place by people running whichever software they think someone made the best case for. So forget about the US presidential election. We've got an election going on right now. It's for the future of a $3 billion market, several $100s of which I'm interested in because I have a 0.7 of a Bitcoin, or maybe more or less. And anyway, this is the more interesting election to follow. Forget about Donald Trump. You can look at graphs like this all day.
Does Bernie like Bitcoin?
Probably. Be better. It's a good fundraising vehicle, right?
So the 8 megabyte needs 75% to win, and then BIP 100, does that mean the 95% that was in place before?
You know, I have to do a little bit of research to find out how this will actually play out. So even though these people are running different versions of the software, it doesn't represent a final choice of the community. 75% of the network has to be running the same change for a change to actually kind of hit the tipping point. Don't quote me on that because I'm not exactly sure how that plays out. I know that right now we're still on the old system. And if
The old system requires 90% plus.
so, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really understand how the change becomes a real change. How these things are all running. They've got a percentage of the network right now, but it doesn't represent a real change until a certain critical mass of the nodes and miners are running the new system.
Right.
Correct.
Well, Rick, we talked about that. T1, right? 5%.
But XT represents a change in governance, and that is one of the big changes in the governance. Is that change in that figure
Right.
under the existing system? And BIP 100 uses the Bitcoin core. It's not a change in the consensus.
Dividing again.
Yeah. So XT, aka BIP 101, is the one that changes the consensus system and has the lower number. If we get more than, I don't know, it's 90% plus, I don't know if it's 95, I don't know if it's 99, I don't know the exact number. Get on board with BIP 100. Well, BIP 100 is the way to go, the way it's going to go.
That's way more considered value. Like XT is like 75%, yep, we'll fork the chain. Whereas you're saying 99%.
Yeah.
Can you hit the 24-hour number, please? In the last 20 of the network on BIP 100, sorry, there we go. We get 66% of the network on BIP 100 and another 27% sitting on the fence. So if those people make a decision, well, we're there.
Well, even like default is a decision because there's talk of like just keeping it 1 megabyte, do the clearinghouse and build something on top like Lightning Network.
Upgrading is also a vote in this system.
That would
But that's not compatible with XT.
Right.
XT is truly an altcoin. It's not Bitcoin. It's not good old Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin XT, an altcoin.
could XT run alongside Bitcoin, or would it?
It already does. It's an altcoin.
It's not an
isn't
altcoin currently because the block sizes are compatible.
At
But
this moment.
if it triggers at 75% after January, it triggers a waiting time of 2 weeks, and at that point, it'll start throwing in blocks bigger than 1 megabyte, up to 8 megabytes.
Which negates all the people that haven't upgraded.
Yeah, what happens then is anyone on non-XT will reject those 8 bigger than 1 megabyte blocks, and then it'll fork the blockchain. There'll be 2 versions of it, and then that's when you get an altcoin. Well, one of these are 2 different coins. So 2 different blockchains. Bitcoins on both.
I'll have one Bitcoin and one.
It's a disaster,
XT
basically.
No. The only people it affects are the people who are transacting after that occurs. Holding a Bitcoin right now, it doesn't make any difference to you which way it goes. Bitcoin's still a Bitcoin. So if you transact during the time where we're in that 2-week lag and you are on the loser chain, well, then you've got a problem you've got to deal with.
Yeah, you.
Oh, shit, that's not good.
But you'll have, if you don't transact, you'll have a Bitcoin on XT chain.
So essentially, let's say it does happen, odds are that everything will freeze for 2 weeks if nobody wants to lose their Bitcoin or XT.
I think the design is that if it's free for that 2-week period, if you got 75% of the miners on XT, then the other 25% know they're in the minority. They're either going to switch to XT, or they're going to be mining on not a very secure blockchain, and they'll probably die in the blockchain. So it'll force that 25% onto the majority. Is the design.
Xcoin, so XT was BIP 101, right?
Yep.
So it's not going to happen.
Well, we'll see. It looks like it has peaked, but make sure you come every Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Okay, let's table the block size debate. We're running low on time, and I know everybody is here to talk about the Shemitah. So let's see what the Shemitah has to say. I meant to bring my wizard hat. Let's see, where's our Shemitah conversation going on here? So you guys know what the Shemitah is? Shemitah is some sort of thing that in mystical Judaism, something that happens every 7 years, where everyone's debts are forgiven, and every 10 times that you have the Shemitah, they have a Jubilee, which is when crazy stuff happens that transcends the physical world, right? We're in the woo-woo land here, but there's people talking seriously about this, doing all kinds of kind of what I call numerology, or they're making predictions based on things that have happened at former times when this Shemitah happened. Every 7 years. We had the global financial crisis about 7 years ago, so we're due for something to happen. 7 years before that, we had the financial crisis around the tech bubble. 7 years before that, we had the 1987 crash. They're like, or 94, then 87. I don't know.
Has anybody made the joke that the Jews go on holiday and the fantasy crashes, like that's the reason?
No, because the transaction volume goes down.
It's like conspiracy stuff that September 11th was all part of this as well.
Probably. Well, there's a whole, when you start looking at Bitcoin and you start having, you're looking, these are the things that start to show up in your feed as suggested things to watch. I don't know what it is. It's there's a lot of people that I think make a living based on scaring people, based on saying, oh, well, the sky is falling, so buy my newsletter, or buy my, fill in the blank. They have this kind of scare people into buying whatever I'm selling. And you see things like this website, Survive Shemitah, and it's this video. It's like kind of really dark and, sinister, and, sign up for my book and I'll tell you everything you need to know to survive Shemitah. You got this guy, Jeff Berwick, and this is another conspiracy theorist guy in the show notes. These are both conspiracy guys, but this guy this conspiracy guy debunks this conspiracy guy's Shemitah hypothesis. So it's a good watch.
What price is supposed to happen?
I think on today, 15th of September.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for the heads up.
Yeah, sorry. I hope you guys make it home. It was nice knowing you. I do want to point out, though, I think some real world things, though, that I think are emboldening people to make these dire predictions, right?
It's called the internet.
Besides the internet. One of them is the Federal Open Market Committee meeting happening on 17th. That's tomorrow and the day after. I think the meeting happens tomorrow, and they have their press conference, or they leak some information on the day after that. And this is about the Fed's policy around interest rates. Are you guys familiar with this problem? Well, not problem. It's something we've talked about many times. Essentially, the Federal Reserve, which controls interest rates for the entire planet, essentially, has artificially held interest rates at or near zero since the global financial crisis. They haven't raised rates for something like 9 years. And they've been kind of telegraphing over the last maybe 4 or 5 quarters that they may begin to raise interest rates in September of 2015. We should know by the end of the week if they're going to do that or not. And essentially, this is a policy mechanism that central banks have at their disposal to guide the global economy. They can either print money or they can control the interest rate. Those are the 2 levers. You ever seen the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, like pulling all these levers? Those are the 2 levers that he or she has at their disposal. It used to be Bernanke, now it's Miss Yellen. Well, they're going to make that decision in the next few days. So if they don't change the interest rate, they're going to kick the can down the road in December. But if they do raise interest rates by 25 basis points, which is 0.25%, then it will probably have a tremendous effect on the markets. Yeah.
Holy Shemitah.
Yeah, holy Shemitah. The other thing that's in the works is the IMF is thinking about adding the Chinese yuan to the basket of currencies that is the SDR, special drawing rights. It is the currency of the IMF. And basically, if they introduce the yuan into the SDR, it's a vote of confidence for China and Chinese projects in the world. And essentially, it's a vote for the de-dollarization of international commerce, right? So it means that the dollar becomes less crucial to all transactions that happen around the world. So right now, if you want to buy a barrel of oil, that barrel of oil is denominated in dollars, and so it creates a demand for dollars. But if you can start to perform international transactions without using the dollar, then the demand for the dollar goes down, and it lessens the power of the United States within the world's economy. So if they add the yuan to the SDR, that could also have an effect on the global balance of power. So these things and lots of other things, that combined with the fact that most crises happen in the fall. People go on vacation in the northern hemisphere all summer, and they come back to work in September and October, and that's where we usually see stock markets kind of crash or do the thing that they're going to do. So again, if you want to survive, you have to continue to come to Tuesday night, the filter meetings. Otherwise, you may go broke. My newsletter is on sale on my website. It's $19.99 a month. And we accept Bitcoin. Anyway, any questions on that?
When's that meeting? The US one, did that happen?
I looked here, and it doesn't look like it's got a date. It's ongoing research, but they're supposed to make a decision in the fall.
Can I ask a probing question?
What's
So
that?
you said you only own like 0.7% of Bitcoin now, right? Less than it?
Yeah.
Why? Why such a little amount?
Oh, that was just a joke. I wasn't actually saying how much Bitcoin I have,
Okay.
but I can show you my wallet afterward.
Okay.
It's really impressive. It's huge. All right, guys. Well, we're out of time, but we are back in the swing of things for the filter. We're going to get together every week at 5 p.m. Note 5 p.m., not 6 p.m. 5 p.m. every Tuesday, same time every week. And in the meantime, you guys can check out our Facebook page. Find all the stuff on Shemitah you can find and post it here. Find all the stuff you can find on the block size debate, and try and find a new topic for us to talk about every once in a while. I'm getting a little. I think this block size limit is well. Hopefully it'll be over soon. Anyway, that's all the time we have. Thanks for coming, guys, and we'll see you next week.
I mixed